It's an unwritten rule of the courtroom that when Judge Judith Sheindlin's stare narrows, the room's temperature drops a full 10 degrees. The air, thick with the scent of old paper and stale coffee, becomes electrified, crackling with a palpable tension. Today, that stare, a laser beam of pure, unfiltered scrutiny, was fixed on Mr. Chris Wood. He stood before her, a mountain of a man with an unfortunate mullet and a tapestry of faded tattoos that crawled up his neck and disappeared into the collar of his worn denim shirt. He was a portrait of nonchalance, almost theatrical in his studied calm, a stark contrast to the young woman seated beside him. Sarah Miller was a study in nervous energy. Her hands, clasped tightly in her lap, were a testament to her anxiety. She was a dental assistant, a meticulous, quiet woman who found solace in the methodical rhythm of her job, the precise angles of a dental x-ray, the sterile cleanliness of a procedure room, the gentle reassurance she offered to patients. Her life was built on a foundation of careful planning and hard work. She'd spent years scrimping and saving, putting away every spare dollar from her meager salary to finally put a down payment on a small condo, a two-bedroom unit with a sliver of a balcony. This wasn't just a home, it was a fortress of her own making, a symbol of her independence and financial security. The thought of taking out a personal loan, any loan, for any reason, had always been anathema to her. Debt was a four-letter word in her family, a specter to be avoided at all costs. Yet here she was, in a television courtroom, suing for the return of $8,500 she had willingly borrowed in his name. Judge Judy's voice, a gravelly force of nature, cut through the silence. "Mr. Wood, I'm gonna start with you, okay?" Chris shifted his weight, his hands shoved deep into his pockets. "Yes, Your Honor, because I see that you're here and you have no evidence in front of you." "A little piece." Judge Judy gestured to a tiny crumpled slip of paper he was holding. Chris held it up with a flourish. "Yes, Your Honor. That's all you need. That must be for tinted windows." She said it with a deadpan wit that earned a few muffled snickers from the audience, quickly silenced by a sharp glare from the bailiff. "Bird." "And an exhaust system," Chris added, his voice a low rumble. "My countersuit." "Now she has a whole bunch of papers." "You have a whole bunch of papers and where?" Judge Judy looked at Sarah. Sarah nodded, her voice barely a whisper. "I do." She clutched a thick manila folder, its contents a meticulous record of her financial ruin. Bank statements, loan agreements, a printed-out log of text messages. It was her entire life's careful planning, reduced to a collection of incriminating documents. "And your lawsuit claims that he owes you money for a loan that you took out for him for a motorcycle." Judge Judy's gaze bounced between them. "Yes, ma'am," Sarah confirmed, her voice gaining a fractional amount of strength. The judge leaned forward, her elbows on the bench. "And it was at a time when, despite the fact that you're neighbors, and you've been neighbors for a while, you briefly dated." Sarah's cheeks flushed. She and Chris had met on their shared floor of the apartment complex. He was the loud, boisterous neighbor who always had people coming and going, the scent of his tattoo parlor clinging to his clothes. She was the quiet one who left for work at the same time every morning, her purse strap slung over her shoulder. Their paths had crossed in the laundry room, a brief, awkward conversation about a broken washing machine. Then a shared elevator ride, a few more brief chats, and suddenly he was asking her to dinner. Sarah, a creature of habit, was both intrigued and terrified. He was so different, so wild and unpredictable. He lived in the moment, making his living with a needle and ink, working side jobs to supplement his income. For Sarah, who found comfort in stability, the sheer chaos of his life was both fascinating and unsettling. "Yes, Your Honor," Sarah admitted. The briefly part of their relationship was a painful understatement. It had been an exhilarating whirlwind romance, a few short, heady weeks of stolen kisses in the hallway and late-night talks on her tiny balcony, where he painted a picture of a future she hadn't dared to dream of. He talked about his dreams of opening his own shop, of a life on the open road, of a freedom she had only ever read about in books. When he'd told her about the motorcycle he desperately wanted, his eyes alight with a childlike excitement, she had felt a pang of a different kind of emotion, a fierce desire to help him achieve his dreams. And it was during this time that you were dating that you allegedly took out this loan for him, and Judge Judy continued, her voice devoid of emotion. You also have another part of your lawsuit for harassment, annoying behavior. I don't know if I'm going to bother with that, but what I want to know is, what proof do you have to show me that you actually took out a loan for him and gave him the money to buy this bike? Because he says he has never taken a dime from you. Chris stood with his arms crossed, a smirk playing on his lips. He was the picture of a man who knew he was in the right, a confident swagger that made Sarah's stomach clench. He had denied everything, of course. When she had tried to talk to him about the loan, he had simply shrugged, claiming he didn't know what she was talking about. Their brief, passionate romance had ended as abruptly as it began, leaving her with an $8,500 debt and a broken heart. Your Honor, Sarah began, her voice quivering slightly. I have text messages from the day that I was at the bank taking out the personal loan to loan him the money for the motorcycle. For him. For Chris. For Chris. And Chris responded to you. He did. In text messages? He did. Okay, then stop. Judge Judy's hands shot up, a silent command for Sarah to cease talking. The audience held its breath. She looked at Chris. Okay, now she has that. Chris's confident facade wavered for a split second. The smirk vanished, replaced by a momentary flicker of panic. It was gone as quickly as it came, but Sarah saw it. Bird, the bailiff, stood impassively, his hands behind his back, a silent observer to the unfolding drama. I'd like to see that, Chris said, his voice a little too loud, a little too eager. I'm going to see it, Judge Judy promised. The audience let out a collective sigh of relief, a wave of anticipation washing over the room. The courtroom was a theater, and the judge was the main act. Awesome! Chris's attempt at bravado fell flat, eliciting another round of quiet laughter. So when did you give him money, in what month and year, to buy a motorcycle? Judge Judy's questioning had a rhythm to it, a slow build of pressure that squeezed the truth out of her subjects like juice from a lemon. I loaned Chris the money on March 5, 2015, in the amount of $8,500. Sarah stated the facts with a newfound resolve. If you check DMV records, would it indicate that there was a transfer of title to you for a motorcycle on or about the 5th of March, or the 7th of March, or the 10th of March 2015? The judge's eyes, sharp and piercing, never left Chris's. No, Your Honor. The words were out of his mouth before he could think, a knee-jerk denial that betrayed the truth. So you did not purchase a motorcycle in that year? I purchased 3 motorcycles in that year. Chris's voice was a mixture of defensiveness and pride. Yeah, when? I purchased the last one a few weeks ago. No, 2015. Judge Judy's voice was getting louder, more insistent. I purchased one the middle of January. January 2015? Yes, Your Honor. Okay. The judge's gaze was unrelenting. I purchased another one probably 2 months after that, in March. That's what we're talking about, March. Yeah, but we're not talking about... No, we're talking about March, so you did purchase one in March. Yeah. Good. The word was like a period at the end of a sentence, a final confirmation of his lie. The audience murmured, and Sarah's body language, which had been so tense, seemed to relax just a fraction. At the end of March, 2015. Yes, Your Honor. Okay, now tell me the circumstances surrounding you taking out this loan for him. The interrogation began with the details of their relationship, but Judge Judy, a veteran of human deception, knew that the true story lay in the finances. She pivoted, her gaze sharp as a scalpel, now dissecting Chris's life with merciless precision. I moved into the house that I live in February 1st, 2015. Sarah began, her voice a steady stream of facts, a stark contrast to the emotional turmoil she was keeping in check. I'm 4 houses down from Chris. Chris and I struck up a friendship. We began hanging out. Everything, we got along great. Great, hanging out, Judge Judy repeated, the words dripping with skepticism. The phrase in her courtroom was a flimsy foundation for an $8,500 loan. He came to me the first week in March and said that he had found a motorcycle from a private party up near Sacramento, California. The person selling the bike was asking $7,500, and he said the bike was worth almost twice that much. Sarah's narrative was a clear chronological recounting of her descent into financial recklessness. He asked if he could borrow the money from me, and he promised to pay me back 3 to 4 months later. From what? The judge's question was a jolt, an immediate demand for a concrete plan. He promised to pay me back the loan amount. I understand. From what was he going to pay you back in 3 or 4 months? From his paycheck? Was he going to sell this motorcycle? He told me that he was going to turn around and sell the bike for double what it was worth. He said $13, $14,000. The moment the words left Sarah's mouth, the absurdity of the situation hung in the air. A seasoned financial predator or a desperate dreamer? Sarah had chosen to believe the latter. She had wanted to. Her stable, predictable life had lacked the thrill of a grand gesture, of believing in someone's impossible dream. The fantasy was far more intoxicating than the reality. Okay, and he didn't have the money. It wasn't a question. It was a statement of fact, a foundation upon which the rest of the case would be built. He didn't have the money, but Sarah confirmed. Judge Judy's attention shifted. A spotlight now focused on the stark contrast between the two lives before her. What do you do for a living? She asked Sarah. I am a registered dental assistant. Sarah's response was a badge of honor, a quiet testament to her stability and professional discipline. Do you work for a dentist full-time? I do. Same dentist? Yes, for 14 years. The words were like bricks, building a wall of credibility around her. Then the spotlight swung to Chris. And what do you do, Mr. Wood, for a living? I'm a tattoo artist. The answer was offered with a proud, almost defiant air. Do you have your own business, or do you work for someone else? I work for somebody else. For how long? I've been a tattoo artist for 25 years. I'm talking about the person that you're currently working for. How long have you been working for them? The judge's impatience was a slow burn, a sign she was already running out of patience with Chris's evasiveness. 2.5 years. Are you paid by check or cash? Cash. I get paid by check by my other job. I run a CNC machine. Chris began to ramble, trying to add a layer of respectability to his life. Shh. The judge's command was sharp, silencing him instantly. You get paid in cash by the tattoo parlor that you work for. Yes, Your Honor. Because I asked you how you supported yourself. You said, I'm a tattoo artist. You didn't tell me about another job. The accusation was simple but damning. It highlighted a fundamental lack of transparency, a pattern of half-truths. How much do you make as a tattoo artist? Depends on the piece. Well, if you say that that's your living, how much do you make a week? The question was a demand for a simple, honest answer. I don't know, maybe $600 a week. And in your other job where you get paid by check, what kind of job is that? I'm a setup technician on a CNC machine. I make aluminum rims, motorcycle parts. The words, meant to impress, only solidified his connection to the very thing he was being accused of obtaining with Sarah's money. And the name of the company that you work for? Alltech Technology. I'm not sure what that has to do with this case, but okay. The defiance was back, a thin veneer of arrogance over a growing pool of discomfort. How long have you worked for them? For a year? You work an 80-hour week? No. You work a 40-hour week? 25 hours a week. So you're not a full-time employee? Nope. How much do you get paid from them? Probably $400 a week. Judge Judy's head tilted slightly, a tell that she had all the information she needed to form a judgment. Okay, so we're now in March 5, 2015. He's got this great opportunity to buy a motorcycle. Tell me what you did. The narrative was back in Sarah's hands, and a tense silence fell over the courtroom. That morning, I went to Coast Hills Federal Credit Union and applied for a personal loan in the amount of $8,500. The memory was vivid, a mental replay she had rehearsed 1,000 times. The credit union was a small, local branch, smelling of new carpet and freshly laundered money. She sat across from a loan officer named Maria, a kind, middle-aged woman with a reassuring smile. Maria had asked her the standard questions: her job, her salary, the purpose of the loan. Sarah had been vague, saying it was for an unexpected expense. Her inner monologue a cacophony of justifications and warnings. It's for him. He'll pay you back. This is a mistake. He's going to break your heart and your bank account. But she had pushed the doubts down, telling herself that this was a small risk for a man who made her feel alive in a way no dental practice ever could. Wait a minute. Judge Judy's question cut through the memory. Well, if he asked you for $7,500, why did you apply for $8,500? He asked me to take out $8,500 so that he had an additional $1,000 to pay for the tax, license, and registration on the bike. The added $1,000 was the final, devastating piece of evidence of her complete trust. That's funny, Chris muttered, the words an oily whisper that made Sarah flinch. Okay, keep going, the judge commanded, her focus on Sarah. I did get approved for the loan for $8,500, and I met him afterward with the cash. The moment of the cash handover was burned into her memory. She had met him at his place holding a thick envelope, the paper crisp and new. He had been ecstatic, his eyes alight with a feverish, almost manic joy. He'd hugged her tightly, lifting her off the ground, a wave of gratitude and affection that had made her feel like the most important person in the world. He promised to pay her back, his words a breathless torrent of vows and thanks. That evening, he drove up to Sacramento with Lauren to pick up the motorcycle. Who's Lauren? The question was an unexpected turn. His, Sarah hesitated, the name a bitter taste in her mouth. His what? His roommate. The word was a heavy weight, a symbol of the blurry lines in their relationship. The audience stirred, a ripple of quiet understanding passing through them. It was a detail that added a layer of emotional complexity to the story of financial fraud. His roommate, Judge Judy repeated, her eyes narrowed. The judge's skepticism was a physical presence in the room, an invisible force that seemed to push against the lies. Yes, and sent me pictures of the bike, promised to pay me, again, on time. Within 3 to 4 months, he would have the full amount paid off, back to me in cash. Show me. He says you never gave him any money. I have text messages from that day. Sarah's hand went to the manila folder. Okay, I'd like to see them. Did you take this from your phone? I did. I'd like to see it on your phone. Judge Judy held out her hand, a simple request that revealed a chasm of broken trust. Sarah's hand started to tremble. Well, Your Honor, Chris broke my phone. A laugh, loud and jarring, erupted from Chris. A few members of the audience glanced at him, then quickly looked away, uncomfortable. He punched my phone, but this is the phone that has all the evidence. The truth was out, a brutal, ugly fact that she had been trying to avoid saying out loud. The incident had happened a month after the loan, a small argument that had escalated into a shocking display of violence. The moment his fist connected with the device, the screen splintering into a spiderweb of shattered glass, a part of her had shattered too. The phone was a symbol of their connection, and its destruction was a foreshadowing of the betrayal to come. I'd like to see it. The judge's voice was firm, unyielding. Okay. No, I don't want to see. I want you to get it up so I can read it. It won't turn on. Sarah's voice was a choked whisper. Go figure, Chris sneered, his laughter a cruel, triumphant sound. When did he break your phone? The following month, in April. In 2015? Yes. So how did you manage to get these? Shortly after I loaned him the motorcycle loan money, Sarah was explaining, her voice a little breathless from the effort of reliving the past. How did you manage to get these? Judge Judy pressed, her gaze unwavering. I emailed them to myself, and I had concerns that I wasn't going to get paid back at that point. And one night I went through and I emailed some text messages to myself, and then shortly after he broke my phone. The admission of foresight, tinged with fear, hung heavy in the air. Show me the emails. I have them. Sarah gestured vaguely at her folder. No, I want to see them on a machine. The judge's tone was firm, demanding tangible evidence, not printed out copies. Do you want them on I can show you on my phone. Sarah fumbled with her phone, her fingers struggling with the familiar interface. The courtroom was hushed, every eye on her, waiting. She's taking a long time to see, Chris drawled, a smirk playing on his lips. trying to inject a dose of levity or perhaps irritation into the proceedings. Judge Judy, unperturbed, leveled a cool stare at him. I have nothing but time. I do too. I'm having a good time down here. Thanks. Chris continued, his bravado a flimsy shield against the judge's authority. That's a shame. Well, not for me. It gets me out of town. The audience chuckled nervously, sensing the dangerous game Chris was playing. Your Honor, I have these on my phone, but I would have to go all the way through from... Sarah's voice trailed off, her frustration evident as she struggled to navigate the cracked screen. I have time. The judge's patience was stern, not indulgent. She just said she had plenty of time. Chris piped up again, pushing the boundary. Bird, sir, don't do that, okay? Bird, the bailiff, stepped forward, his quiet authority a sharp contrast to Chris's flippant interruptions. Yes, sir, Your Honor. In regards to that, can I show you my text messages from her recently of her sending me pictures of herself? You know, she's saying all this stuff. Well, I mean, I got my stuff ready right here, so I don't have a huge stack of papers. Chris's attempt to deflect and embarrass Sarah was brazen, but Judge Judy was not easily swayed. It's not your turn yet. It's not your turn yet, Mr. Wood. Her voice was a low growl, a clear warning. Okay. Chris retreated, his bluster momentarily deflated. You have to wait your turn. Yes, Your Honor. The psychological chess match between them was palpable. Chris testing the limits, Judy swiftly reasserting control. Good. While she's looking for that, why don't you stand up here? I have a few questions for you. Judge Judy motioned to the woman sitting quietly behind Chris. This was Lauren Wenzel, Chris's roommate, and her body language alone spoke volumes. She walked slowly, almost reluctantly, to the podium, her shoulders hunched, her gaze fixed on the floor. Her hands fidgeted at her sides, a clear sign of her discomfort. The tension in the courtroom ratcheted up a notch. Yes, ma'am, Lauren mumbled, her voice barely audible. How long have you and Mr. Wood been roommates? Judy's questions were direct, leaving no room for ambiguity. Oh, we've been roommates for what, 3 years? Lauren's eyes darted to Chris, a fleeting look of uncertainty, a silent plea for guidance. Don't look at him, look at me. How long have you been roommates with Mr. Wood? Judy's voice was sharp, cutting through the unspoken communication between the two. Lauren's eyes snapped back to the judge, her cheeks flushing. We have lived in this residence together for 3 years. Prior to that, we lived in another residence together for 6 years. I've known Mr. Wood for a long time. The longer she spoke, the more her voice gained a defensive edge, betraying a loyalty that might prove problematic. And your relationship with him is strictly as a roommate? The judge's question was loaded, and a ripple of anticipation went through the audience. Lauren hesitated, a small, awkward laugh escaping her lips. It's been other things, but at the time, yes, we're roommates. The audience erupted in a wave of laughter, quickly subdued by Bird's stern presence. And at the time that this happened, I got it. Judy cut her off, a wry smile playing on her lips. She understood the unspoken complexities. All right, good, Lauren said, visibly relieved. Okay, so you're on and off roommates, on and off social. The judge's summation was precise, capturing the convoluted nature of their relationship. Correct. Are you on social time now or roommate time now? Roommate time for quite a while. Lauren's tone was guarded, as if she were revealing too much. Do you remember going to pick up the motorcycle? Judy's voice became sharper, zeroing in on the core of Sarah's claim. No. Lauren's answer was immediate, almost too quick. In March? No, I don't recall this. She shook her head, her gaze firmly fixed on the judge. Did you ever go and pick up a motorcycle with him? Yeah, several times. This admission, seemingly innocent, was a subtle crack in her defensive wall. This motorcycle was where, Miss Wenzel? Up near Sacramento, California. Sarah interjected, unable to hold back. Do you remember that? Judy asked Lauren. No, I don't. We would have had to get a trailer to get a motorcycle, and we haven't been in possession of a trailer for a long time. We normally buy local. Lauren's reasoning was delivered with an air of certainty, an attempt to appear logical and credible. Your Honor, that's not true, Sarah blurted out, her frustration boiling over. Shh, shh. Judy silenced her with a stern glance. She wasn't interested in interruptions. She was interested in the truth. Extracted her way. Do you have a car? I have a car, yes. And Mr. Wood not only buys motorcycles, but he rides them. Correct. So all he needed was a ride one way. You don't need a trailer because he could ride the motorcycle back. The judge's logic was like a hammer, systematically dismantling Lauren's flimsy excuse. The courtroom murmurs grew louder, an audience captivated by the unfolding drama. Not necessarily because sometimes they're not working. Lauren tried to pivot, her voice tinged with desperation. Well, this one was working because it cost $7,500. Judy's voice was laced with an almost satirical wit, exposing the absurdity of Lauren's argument. Okay, well, Lauren trailed off, visibly flustered. So this one was working, and it was capable of being driven. Because Mr. Wood's not a stupid man, is he? The question was rhetorical, a rhetorical jab that made Chris visibly bristle. Well, no. Lauren, caught between defending Chris and admitting to his intelligence, stumbled. So he wouldn't spend $7,500 on a non-working motorcycle. The judge's statement was irrefutable. I haven't. Chris chimed in, unable to resist, his tone defensive. Judy ignored him, her eyes still fixed on Lauren, a silent demand for the truth. The psychological chess match continued, with Judy always a few moves ahead. Judge Judy's gaze was fixed on Chris, a challenge in her eyes. The laughter from the courtroom had died down, replaced by a tense silence. I haven't spent $7,500 on a... Chris began, trying to regain his composure. Ever? The judge interrupted, her voice a low hum of skepticism. No, I buy Dinah's, Harley Dinah's for $5 to $6 grand. I never exceed that because then I can't double my profit. So, he was trying to sound like a savvy businessman, a man who knew the ins and outs of the motorcycle market. The words, however, came out sounding like a man desperate to justify a purchase he didn't make. Or perhaps a purchase he did make, but not with his own money. Okay, did we find anything yet? The judge shifted her attention back to Sarah, who was still fumbling with her cracked phone. Every time I go back, it brings me back up. I have them on here. I emailed them to myself. They're in here. I'm sorry, Your Honor. I would have saved them higher up here if I had known. Sarah's frustration was a physical thing, a desperate fumbling that mirrored the unraveling of her life. She had meticulously organized her life, her finances, and even this evidence, only to have a single moment of violence render it all a jumbled mess. Yeah, 'cause this is nothing, Judy said, gesturing to the phone. Other than the emails, photographs that you took a photograph, a snapshot of your phone. Is that what you did? And then emailed it to yourself? Of my broken phone? Sarah asked, her voice tight with the memory. Of the text messages, Ms. Miller, is that what you did? You took a photograph of your phone. I screenshotted it and emailed it to myself. The admission was a quiet testament to her growing anxiety. It had been the first week of April, a few short weeks after she had given him the money. Her hope, which had been so bright and fragile, was already beginning to dim. She was a planner, a person who lived her life in carefully constructed increments. Taking a loan had been a monumental leap of faith, and now that faith was being tested. She hadn't been able to sleep, the loan payment date a looming deadline in her mind. He was no longer the charming, roguish neighbor. He was becoming something else, something she couldn't quite put her finger on, but that sent a chill down her spine. The act of screenshotting and emailing the messages was a primal act of self-preservation, a desperate attempt to create a paper trail before the trail ran cold. And you did that because? Just for my own information. Why would you do that if it was on your phone? Chris started exhibiting some aggressive behavior towards me, and by the time the first loan payment was due on April 19th of 2015, I called him 2 days prior on the 17th and asked him for the money. And he told me now is not the time to be asking me for this. I don't have time for this. Her voice shook slightly as she recounted the moment. The hope, so vibrant just a few weeks prior, had been extinguished with a single contemptuous remark. And my concern immediately was that he was not going to be paying me for the loan. Okay, now I want you to tell me the date that he destroyed your phone, and then we're going to take a recess and you're going to go find it. He destroyed my phone around the middle of April 2015. Tell me how. My phone had gone off, and he picked it up and was reading a text message from a friend and got mad and punched it. And he was wearing a ring. The words were blunt, almost clinical, but the image they conjured was brutal. The sound of the blow, the spiderweb of shattered glass, the sheer, unbridled rage in his eyes, she had replayed it 1,000 times in her mind. It was the moment she knew, with cold certainty, that the man she had briefly loved was a lie. Which friend? My friend Jesse. Okay, we're going to take a break. You can go find it, and as soon as you find it, we're going to come back. The judge's command was final. Sarah, a picture of weary determination, went back to the defendant's table and began a frantic search. She had to find it. She had to. Her credibility and her financial future depended on it. I have it, a voice said a few moments later. Oh, good. Perfect. Just in the nick of time. A young woman with a long, dark braid stepped forward, holding a phone. This was Sarah's younger sister, the Jessie from the phone call. She hadn't been there when the phone was broken, but she had been there for her sister in the aftermath. The late-night calls, the tearful texts, the fear. She had been the one to help Sarah retrieve the crucial evidence from the broken phone, to help her piece together the narrative of betrayal. She had the emails on her phone. I'll star those for you. They're the starred ones right there. She just has to click on it. She handed the phone to Bird, who approached the judge with it. I don't want to even touch it. I'm afraid I'll touch it and it'll go. The judge made a hand gesture, a sudden motion of a device going dead, and the courtroom chuckled. The tension, for a moment, was cut by a blade of Judy's signature humor. Who's Gleason? The judge asked, looking at one of the texts. My daughter's dad. Would you have her get it back? Please? The judge handed the phone back to Bird. Your Honor, may I speak while we have a few moments? Chris interjected, ever the opportunist. Mm-hmm. Having known Chris for so long, I know that he's a really resourceful person. If he hypothetically needed this money to buy a motorcycle, he would figure out a way to make that money. Lauren, still standing at the witness stand, tried to interject, to provide some kind of defense for him. Sit down. The judge's command was instant, final. Lauren retreated, her face a mask of disappointment. The audience laughed again. He figured out a very resourceful way of getting the money. The judge's tone was dry, a sarcastic indictment of Chris's methods. Why wouldn't she get a contract written out? I mean, that's what I would do. Chris, emboldened by the moment, tried another attack. Am I addressing you? The words were a quiet but devastating rebuke. No, ma'am. Now in 8,500s, right? I'm applying for it right now. That's what I want to see. And he says, yes, babe. Hope he still has the bike. I want to see that on the machine. The judge's words were a summary of the screenshot, a declaration that she had seen the crucial evidence. Yes, I know. My phone's syncing right now. Sarah was still working on her phone. All I want to see is what this says on there. Got it? Yes, Your Honor. Anything else you want to show me? Your Honor, I have copies of the payments for the loan. During the last year and a half, more recently, I've had to call the local police department for Chris harassing me. She said it with a weary resignation, as if the harassment was an unfortunate but expected consequence. Let's not get into harassment. Judy was here for the money, not the messy emotional fallout. Let us get into loan. What other proof do you have, other than this, which is some evidence that he was happy that you were getting $8,500 and he still hoped that they had the bike? And that was in March of 2015. Let me see what proof you have, if you have any, that he made the first few payments. Because he did make payments. He did, Your Honor. I have copies of the receipts from the bank from the payments made and the months that he paid me. Sarah reached into her folder, her fingers finding a new set of carefully organized documents. Just a second. Did he pay you or did he pay the bank? He paid me in cash, and then I would go to the bank and make the payment. He refused to go to the bank and make the payment. The ritual of the cash exchange had been a constant source of tension for Sarah. He would hand her a crumpled wad of bills, often late, often with a dismissive wave. The money, smelling of stale cigarette smoke and something vaguely metallic, felt tainted. She would take it, her heart a tangled mess of hope and dread, and go straight to the Coast Hills Federal Credit Union, where the air was always cool and clean, and the transaction was impersonal and sterile. Each time she would hand the cash to the teller and watch as the numbers on her account went down, her faith in Chris shrinking with every deposit. How much did he pay you in Hush? $2,800. He made 10 payments. Each payment of $280 was a brief reprieve from the anxiety, a little flicker of hope that he would fulfill his promise. But they were always a struggle to get, requiring a barrage of texts and calls. And what were the monthly payments? $280? When did he stop making the payments? He stopped in December of 15, and then I did receive one payment from him, which was April of 2016. That was the last payment I received from him. The words were a quiet, devastating finality. The payments had simply stopped. For 4 months, she had tried to contact him. Her texts a desperate, unanswered cry into the void. Then, out of the blue, a single payment had appeared. It was a cruel, manipulative gesture, a fleeting promise of a future that would never come. It felt less like a payment and more like a taunt. Tell me the circumstances surrounding that payment in April of 2016. I just continued to call him and text him and, Sarah began, her voice cracking with the memory of the sleepless nights. Well, that would be on the new phone. Judy cut her off, her mind already moving to the next piece of evidence. The case was moving forward, step by painful step, towards a final, unavoidable reckoning. On your newer phone, Judge Judy confirmed, her voice a low, steady rumble of authority. Right, Sarah replied, her eyes fixed on the device in her hands. I'd like you to show me some of those texts. Okay, I have. Sarah's voice trailed off as she began to scroll. The silence in the courtroom was a heavy thing, punctuated only by the faint click of a button. Chris, ever the opportunist, seized the moment. She texted me a bunch of times, harassing me, and I've asked her numerous times to stop texting me. His voice was a blend of indignation and sarcasm, a final desperate attempt to reframe the narrative. Your Honor, may I introduce to you my witness? Sarah's lawyer attempted to interject, a futile gesture against the judge's will. No, I want you to do exactly what I want. The judge's words were a quiet but devastating rebuke, an absolute rejection of his agenda. Chris let out a small, derisive chuckle, a sound that grated on everyone's nerves. Which is to get me the recent texts after April of this year, or even before April, when he made the last payment. It was a result of you constantly texting him and trying to get him to make a payment, and that you should have on your new phone. The judge's logic was a steel trap, leaving no room for escape. A deep, theatrical sigh came from Chris. I'm scrolling through all the naked pictures you sent me. The words were a cheap, cruel shot, a final venomous attempt to shame Sarah in front of the world. A gasp rippled through the audience. I'm not looking at your phone, Wood. You have no cause of action that requires that I look at your phone. Judge Judy's voice was cold, a blade of ice. She had seen this kind of a cheap shot 1,000 times before, and it did not impress her. You shouldn't, he muttered, as if she were the one who had just made an obscene gesture. So put it away. I'm reading it. He held the phone up, a defiant smirk on his face. Put it away. The words were a command, final and absolute. Chris, his bravado finally spent, lowered the phone. The bailiff, Bird, cleared his throat. Sarah Wenzel has accused ex-boyfriend Christopher Wood of owing for a loan and harassment. Christopher has a countersuit for window tinting and an exhaust system. The recitation of the case felt like a formality now, the outcome already sealed in the air. Now, what I'm really interested in, Mrs. Wood, since we have a question as to not whether there was a loan, but if ever money was transferred from you to Mr. Wood, I understand that you took out a loan. What I want to see is him acknowledging, other than what I've seen so far, Listen to me, I don't need it from you. I need it from him. Do you understand? So, sit on your hands. Don't raise your hand again. The judge's words were a masterclass in courtroom control, a final, decisive move that put all of her focus on the most crucial piece of evidence. Exactly, Chris mumbled under his breath, a fleeting moment of victory. Got it? It would have been sometime in March if he paid you in April. Your Honor, if you click on these are all regarding the loan. Sarah's sister, a beacon of calm in the chaos, offered the phone to Bird. Great, show it to Bird. He knows how to click. And after, I don't know how to click. The judge's self-deprecating humor broke the tension, and a wave of laughter swept through the room. Bird, a man of quiet competence, took the phone. So, just click on it, and then you can arrow back. So the first one is from, you can just scroll through here. Things were going so well. Light laughter. I'm not touching it, Judy said, a hint of weariness in her voice. The laughter returned, lighter this time. Bird, ever professional, began to scroll. The judge read from the phone screen, her voice, a gravelly instrument of justice, cutting through the silence. You didn't loan me any money, you psycho. I don't have a loan through you. I loaned you money in February and March, plus $6,500 you owe for the loan. You've damaged my credit. You didn't loan me any money, you psycho. Is there a thing here? I didn't loan you any money. She looked at the screen, then at Chris. Okay, well, it certainly appears, sir, that you didn't like each other at some point, Okay, now I'm going to hear what you have to say. Tell me who you are. A young woman, Christina, stepped forward. She was a woman in her late 30s, dressed in a sensible pantsuit, her demeanor radiating a quiet, unwavering integrity. She looked like a woman who, like Sarah, lived her life by a set of clear rules and had no time for nonsense. My name's Christina, and I've worked with Sarah for 10 years. I witnessed Mr. Wood twice in the summer of 2015 come by our office. One time I was inside and I witnessed him hand her money out the driver's window of his pickup. She went right after that and told me she was running to make the loan payment. And I also witnessed him come into our office one day and she said, "Do you have my money for the loan payment?" And he said, "Later, afterwards." Got it, the judge said, the two words a final, authoritative stamp on Christina's testimony. The woman's words, simple and direct, had just sealed Chris's fate. Okay, thank you, Christina said, stepping back. Thank you. The case was all but over, but Chris, in a final defiant gesture, tried to salvage what was left of his credibility. Your Honor, I've gone to her work numerous times. She gives me boxes of gloves at a wholesale cost. The words were a bitter attempt to deflect, to create a new narrative of a business disarrangement, but it was a clumsy, desperate lie. You owe her the money, Judy stated, her voice calm and absolute. No, okay, I don't owe her any money. The denial was weak, a final, unconvincing gasp of defiance. Yeah, you do. Okay. Chris's shoulders slumped, the air of arrogant confidence finally deflating. You do. You owe her the rest of the loan. Now I'm going to hear your counterclaim. The judge gestured toward Chris's crumpled slip of paper, her tone a mix of impatience and disdain. I paid to get her, he began, but Judy cut him off. Let's do it, and talk fast. I'm sorry? Let's do it, and talk fast. Well, if you wouldn't cut me off, I'd be able to talk fast. The words, a final act of rebellion, hung in the air, audacious and foolish. A few people in the audience snickered. Bird, the bailiff, stifled a small laugh, a rare sign of his amusement. What did he just say? Judy asked, her voice a dangerous purr. Bird, his voice a low rumble, repeated the words. If you didn't cut him off, maybe he'd talk fast. The judge stared at Chris for a long, quiet moment, a silent judgment that felt more powerful than any verdict. She had heard enough. Okay, judgment for the plaintiff in the amount of $5,000. Your counterclaims dismissed. The words were a swift, decisive finality. The gavel-like voice, the authoritative tone, and the finality of the decision were more than a legal ruling. It was a moral one. The judge's judgment was a vindication for Sarah, a public declaration that she had been wronged. Wow, Chris said, a single word of stunned disbelief. The man who'd been so full of bluster and sarcasm was now reduced to a simple, impotent syllable. He had lost. Bird, parties are excused. You may step out. Good move. The words were a quiet finality. The show was over. Sarah, a picture of weary relief, stood up slowly. The exhaustion was a heavy weight on her shoulders, the emotional toll of the past few months finally catching up to her. The $5,000 judgment was a victory, But it wasn't the full 8,500 she had lost. The money was a good portion of it, but not all. The rest, along with the emotional scars, the broken trust, and the shattered hopes, were a permanent debt she would carry. She would never get that back. She watched as Chris, his face a mask of bitter resentment, gathered his few papers and walked out of the courtroom. The man who had charmed his way into her life and then walked away with her money was now just a bitter stranger in a television court. The finality of the moment was both a relief and a sorrow. The legal fight was over, but the emotional battle would continue to echo in her life. She had won, but she had lost. The $5,000 was justice, but it was a cold, hard justice that couldn't mend the pieces of her heart. She walked out of the courtroom, a victor, but with an unfinished emotional scar that would likely never heal.